and it has to do with how machine learning AI is going to change gaming forever for Microsoft and Xbox. The sky will no longer be the limit. So he says here, over the past few days, I've watched my productivity drop a fairly huge amount owing to a sudden explosion of consumer-friendly and highly amenable artificial intelligence machine learning tools you might have seen on social media. So there's a service like Crayon, automatically generates rough AI images based on virtually any input prompt, have produced a range of wild and wacky collages across the net, which is pretty cool. I haven't seen that. Let's see what this is all about. Oh shit, that is cool. That's kind of creepy though. What the hell is this? Homer Simpson? A still of Homer Simpson in the Blair Witch Project. Yo, that is terrifying. Oh my god. I'm not going to sleep tonight. That's actually scary as hell. GTA 6 chaotic Miami fog. This is really cool. A still of a minion in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Not terrifying, but very cool. That's so cool. I guess so they're doing that with all that AI stuff. Huh. All right. Well, scary, but very cool. That's with like Crayon. Automatically generates rough AI images based on virtually inputted prompts. Produce a wide range of images. Chatbots and weird AI generated that are widely known, but what's perhaps more shocking is this more recent wave of sophistication and how it's already making its way into the general public's consciousness. Yeah, that is kind of creepy. How deep learning AI will change gaming forever. Obviously, machine learning techniques have broad implications for almost every sector of life. Blah, 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 blah. One problem the video game industry generally faces right now pertains to the gap between expectations and investment. And I mean, that's definitely something you see a lot of people talking about. I mean, it happens with every console generation. Essentially happens with like any game release too, right? Like, remember Watch Dogs? That's an infamous one. I mean, Cyberpunk's an infamous one, but when they showed off those trailers, those gameplay, and then the game comes out and it's nowhere near your expectations. With these current generations of consoles, I don't know like what people were expecting. I know for me, the Series X and specifically, maybe not like it hasn't lived up to everything graphically maybe I would have imagined yet. I'm sure there's going to be insane looking games out there, but you think of a game like Forza Horizon 5, game looks absolutely incredible. I don't think I could have imagined anything better looking than that, to be completely honest. So I think a game like that has met my expectations, but there's definitely games out there that you would expect to look better based off of what we were shown and promised with the release of the Series X. But I mean, everything else they talked about with the Series X leading up to the release of it, like all of the buzzwords people were, or the things people were calling buzzwords, like quick resume, I guess velocity architecture with the load times, the backwards compatibility stuff, the smart delivery. What else? The upgrades between the Xbox One versions and the series versions, like all of that stuff has surpassed my expectations just on the ease of use of that console. So, but there's that expectations you see of people comparing every single pixel of every single new game that comes out and saying, this is what runs on a Series X, or this is what runs on a PS5. So yeah, that is definitely a problem the games industry always has. And then when you think about showcases with CGI trailers that get people's expectations so high, and then a lot of the times those expectations aren't met, which again, that's just, you get people hyped, you get people invested into the game as early as possible. The chances are that they're going to pick it up when it comes out is high. So that's why they do it. They say video games are becoming increasingly complex to make, fun, and manage as they explode in exponential complexity and graphical fidelity. Yeah, we've seen tons of that stuff happening in terms of delays and all that type of stuff. 2022 to me is just that year of like down that we've seen. PS5 has had games released, like exclusive games or first party games, with Horizon, and the God of War may be coming out. Gran Turismo, I mean, as someone who played Gran Turismo back on the PS2 a lot, even on the PS3, it was a big disappointment for me in terms of the microtransactions and everything we saw about that. But still, they have released their first party content where Xbox hasn't yet. So, but 2023, like, doesn't matter where you're playing, it's going to be just absolutely insane. I mean, Redfall and Starfield alone are two huge games a lot of people are excited for. So, what is typically thought of as AI in a gaming context generally hasn't been AI in the true sense of the word. Video game non-NPCs and enemies generally operate on a rule-based model that often has to be manually crafted by a programmer. Machine learning models are importantly far more fluid, able to produce their own rules with parameters and respond dynamically to new information on the fly. This applies across all things, whether it's NPC behavior or content generation. Yeah, that's a good point. Like people like when you think of AI and machine learning, a lot of people think about like the upscaling stuff with like FSR and whatever what they're able to do to give us stuff that looks 4K but doesn't tax the console as much as native 4K would, while keeping the frame rate high and that performance. But NPCs, the way that they react in games is so big. One of the games that I always go back to, I don't know if it had any machine learning or AI in it, but it was just so developed so well in terms of the way that I found that the enemies reacted. And it was oh my god, I'm drawing a blank. Outriders. The wine's getting to me. Outriders. When that game first dropped, that's a game I was interested in, and the game came to Game Pass, which I was pumped for. But the way that the enemies reacted in Outriders, where they just kept you guessing what they were going to do, made that game so much better than it probably would have been, just because they just seemed so smart from the reactions. And that's something in gaming that we still see there needs to be improvement of, in the way that your NPCs are reacting to your movements in the game. If they're able to just create these like smarter NPCs within games, the engagement in games would be so much higher. I asked a GPT-3 ML text model to generate a quest for World of Warcraft, including objectives and even NPC dialogue. This is a system that isn't even designed for it, leveraging random and unfiltered information from the internet to recontextualize and repackage the information based on the request. I also asked an AI to generate an evil sentient banana with similarly fun results. Taking context from the internet, the AI models was able to produce a practically infinite quest dialogue, drawing down from information about World of Warcraft on websites and wiki entries, to produce scarily realistic objectives that included real place names and enemy types. That's actually super cool. You think about being able to utilize that. It quickly jumps me to Starfield and 1,000 planets and the mods people are going to be able to do. Imagine they're able to implement stuff like this into the mods, where these just like insane quests are coming, where it's using real world, real space information, and you're able to like jump from different planet to different planet, doing these real like space things that based off of real world previous things that have occurred. I don't know. It's just crazy stuff like that you'd be able to do in Starfield, which we talk about Starfield, the 1,000 planets thing. I'm on the fence that I'm excited for that. A lot of people aren't. A lot of people are thinking that's just going to be boring content, but I think it's going to be just like a world of stuff you're going to be able to do and imagine up. And I'm not a modder, obviously. I'm not going to, but the amount of, or I'm not like someone who's going to go in and create a cool mod, but the amount of stuff people out there in the community are going to be able to do is going to be nuts. So that's really cool. And maybe they'll be able to implement stuff like this. What's he go on here talk about? So they talk about, with direct access to more refined data and tailor-made context by a game developer, it's not hard to extrapolate how these models could be adapted to produce vast arrays of dynamic content. DALL-E and similar models are increasingly capable of producing an array of variants from any prompt, refining them with extraordinary levels of detail. It can also produce remixes of existing images. It's easy to imagine how that could extend to variations of monsters in games, or even variations of in-game behavior and animations. Talk a little bit more about some ML. There's a video here for AI-driven base character animations. This looks pretty cool. Let's see what this is all about. This is NVIDIA, so obviously this isn't, I guess, the tech or whatever the interfaces and stuff they would be using for Xbox, because it's AMD. Imagine the next generation of Minecraft world seed generation tools using machine learning to include game rules, generate unique monsters and new terrain. They could extend and improve tile-based, procedurally generated levels in games like Diablo or Hades. They could generate supplementary quests for end gameplay and MMO type games for World of Warcraft or Fallout 76, and again StarCraft, right? Or Starfield. And then procedurally generated levels against Starfield with the planets, or the ones that are procedurally generated. So it goes on here, talks about just more AI, and says these are just a few of the very basic examples of how machine learning will enhance and elevate games across Xbox Game Studios portfolio. But Microsoft will be keen to extend these services to the broader game development community as well under its Azure PlayFab brand. I mean, Azure PlayFab, yeah, that's huge. Just sending that out to different companies that are going to want to use it. They really do have a huge leg up on the competition with Azure and just the tech that they have in there. So talking about Microsoft, Xbox specifically, goes on here to say Microsoft has been quietly and not so quietly investing quite heavily in machine learning for some time. I'd argue that the impact hasn't been fully felt yet in its gaming, but that could be about to change. So Microsoft announced that it had acquired exclusive rights to some OpenAI models such as GPT-3 back in 2019 as a part of a $1 billion investment. Okay, so since then, Microsoft has begun integrating aspects of machine learning into some of its developer products. So Copilot on GitHub and Power Apps Ideas. Okay, that's cool. OpenAI is developing a broad and extensive research into machine learning techniques loosely based on neural pathways in the human brain. Crazy to think about how the stuff that technology we're getting into these days. DALL-E 2 is producing truly insane lifelike artistic renders from simple text prompts. Yeah, that's pretty cool. There's DALL-E 1. DALL-E, I don't even know what I'm saying right, but DALL-E 2, painting for a fox sitting in a field. Okay, so how is this going to work with Xbox, Jez? Tell me. How is this going to all integrate into Xbox? That's what I want to know. Computers becoming Ascension. Okay. Machine learning tools have already quite notoriously been abused to create all sorts of content that could be considered brand unsafe, at best too harmful, at worst. Machine learning can lead to more sophisticated player hostile bot behavior. Okay, for example, which could automate and trivialize gameplay. Imagine an aimbot not only aimed for you, but also moved and dodged bullets for you as well. I mean, we already have, so you could create that. I feel like that's a lot of effort. People will take the time, people will take the time to go through and create bots like that to ruin games. I mean, we already see all the cheating that goes on in so many of the games out there with like Halo Infinite. Does Halo Infinite even have anti-cheat yet? Do they even have anti-cheat yet in their PC stuff? Like, are people still cheating on PC? I hope not, because I feel like they are, but like, such a huge issue. That, to me, that out of all the things that, yeah, content, I still think Halo Infinite multiplayer is great in terms of gameplay, and it's really fun to play. I still play it. Like, it's not my number one game, but I still jump in, play a couple of matches every week. But the number one thing for me was just like the cheating. Content aside, people going in there and cheating and ruining games for people is the worst thing that ruins games for people who are just trying to have fun. No one's trying to. You're not trying to compete to be the best Halo player in the world. You're trying to go in there and have a good time. It's like, why would you even want to waste your time doing that? So hopefully they get that under control. But apparently with some AI stuff coming out, there's a chance that the people are going to be able to make hostile player bots, which would definitely ruin games. Okay. Distinctly remember a conversation I had with someone at Microsoft the year Minecraft Earth was announced. The canceled Minecraft spinoff was supposed to let people build augmented reality creations and place them in the real world. And I recall asking how Microsoft would be able to prevent naughty creations from unscrupulous crafters from appearing in other players' worlds. Machine learning was discussed as an option. Training some kind of AI to recognize and moderate offensive content would obviously be paramount in a game like Minecraft Earth, which was all about sharing content. So that's good to be able to, like, AI, right? If they can go in and can moderate content that is obviously bad. And when I say bad, I mean like illegal content, like stuff that just everyone agrees shouldn't be there. But the scary thing when you think about this type of stuff with AI moderating content or things like, I don't know, social media stuff that you want to put out there is like they could literally be moderating stuff that maybe somebody just doesn't agree with, or maybe the person who created the AI has programmed it to moderate an opinion that they just disagree with, or something within a game that they don't like, even though it's not illegal, it's not like terrible. So So that's the only thing. That's the only thing I'd be wary of with this type of stuff. But I guess humans can go ahead and do that stuff too, right? When it comes to moderating, humans can literally do the exact same thing. So you just hopefully they're ethical when they create this stuff. So Microsoft also famously used early versions of ML models to moderate its chat channels on Mixer. Well, we know how Mixer turned out. I actually liked Mixer. I thought Mixer was really cool. I was hoping that it was going to get big. I was hoping that it was going to, like, I just found like the interface, I found like the engagement and stuff that they had with the Mixer was better than Twitch. It's kind of a shame that it failed. And I found that like they were better at pushing up smaller creators to get some spotlight with, like, I think they had like a special like spotlight thing where they would take smaller creators and put them on the front page. I don't know if I'm sure Twitch does that sometimes too, but Twitch just seems, I don't know, it's just, it wasn't as cool as a streaming service. It's just almost impossible to compete with Twitch these days. I mean, you think of Facebook Gaming trying to get into it. I don't know how they're doing, but I'm assuming they're not doing nearly close to what Twitch is doing. So this who's high-end Zhang? We're proud to serve as Xbox chief of staff for the past 2.5 years, working with. Oh, this person just recently switched, right? Oh no, maybe not. Of course, human intervention will still be needed for the foreseeable in many cases. Yeah. Okay. So exactly what I just said. You're still going to need that human intervention. It is definitely important. These examples just further represent how pervasive machine learning will be across the entire gaming horizon. Content creation, content moderation, and even community management could be supplemented by AI. Okay, so Microsoft has already been exploring how to implement machine learning into games. So Project Padia. What's Project Padia? I forget this one. Project Padia. When it comes to video games, reinforcement learning agents have typically been trained to win against human opponents. But if we taught them to collaborate with human players instead. Okay, so it's like a collaboration AI thing. Play with trained RL agents, okay? So Project Padia has already demonstrated how AI can be trained to perform collaboratively and dynamically with human players. The page there even has HTML5 minigame you can test out to demonstrate the basics of how it works, and mentions how they were exploring a potential implementation in a team-based brawler Bleeding Edge at one point. So, okay, that's cool. But, like, let's be honest. Do you really want to play games with just AI bots on your team to collaborate with you? Like, I think, like, the whole point of a game like Bleeding Edge is to play with real people, right? So I don't know how well that would take off with, like, games like Bleeding Edge or, like, future games that come. I guess if people there's some people out there that literally just don't want any human interaction at all, so they're going to want that AI interaction. I don't know. Maybe someone in the chat can explain to me better if that would be something they'd be interested in. As I'm pouring more wine, my wife is in the background making fun of me as I'm filling up my glass. I appreciate. No, I'm just kidding. Researchers at Mind Dojo are also building similar ML models into Minecraft, okay? Building bots that can behave more intelligently and perform player-like actions. Again, cool, but like if you're playing a multiplayer game, don't you want to play with real players? I just don't know how it'll ever like replace a real person, right? Microsoft also baked DirectML into the Xbox Series X. So here we go. We're finally at the point where he's talking about Xbox, which is the big thing. We got some more news about that this week as well with FSR 2.0. Microsoft has also baked DirectML into the Xbox Series X and Xbox Series S to provide compute to generic machine learning models. Microsoft also leverages the tech to improve the delivery of streamed games on Xbox Game Pass's cloud gaming platform. That's cool. I don't know about you, but I feel like cloud gaming over the last couple of months or so, maybe like last month and a half or whatever, has just completely improved in terms of I load it up. I used to load it up and I would get like 2 minutes of just artifacting and pixelated stuff and it just didn't look great. Now, like I load up Xbox Cloud Gaming and it's ready to go right away, which is great. And I'm using it on my Steam Deck and it's phenomenal. I mean, I use it for certain types of games. I don't use it for like more games where you really like more engaging stuff, just because I don't want it to like crap out on me if it's multiplayer or something. But for certain games, it's just honestly can't beat Xbox Cloud Gaming. But I'm sure like I want to try and rack up Blade Point on cloud gaming. I may try that tonight after the stream, see how it works. Just because that would be such a just drop in, play a match, and get out, and you just load up the cloud. And it's not a first person shooter. There is gunplay in it, but it's not as like I don't think you need to be nearly as precise as you would for like a Apex Legends or Warzone or something. So Microsoft has hired engineers for its gaming AI efforts led by the Microsoft Research alumna and computer scientist Haiyan Zhang, with the goal of implementing machine learning into game development and gameplay. Microsoft is also one of the few companies with cloud computers pervasive enough to support the processing overhead that could emerge as a result of implementing some of these models directly into service games. Interesting, where they're naturally going to see their full potential realized. So that's very, very interesting right here at this point. Yes, I agree. Microsoft definitely only one of the few companies, is a $1 trillion company with cloud computers pervasive enough to support processing overhead that could emerge as a result of implementing some of these models directly into service games. And why I say that's interesting is because we know that the gaming industry is moving more and more to games as a service as like the main game out there to make them the most money. We know Xbox has, could be a far reach, but we know Xbox has that partnership with PlayStation, with Sony for their cloud stuff for Azure. And when you see stuff like this, if they're able to utilize like this AI stuff for service games, you best believe PlayStation is going to want to utilize that technology as well. As PlayStation has just recently announced, they're trying to, I think it was like they want to put out 12 games as a service games by 2025 or something, and like 2 more coming this year. One of those live service games, I believe now after Summer Games Fest, is going to be that too ambitious Last of Us multiplayer game. Too ambitious. A game that I think they were supposed to give for players with The Last of Us 2. Which my take on that entire thing, I don't know if I ever gave my take on that, but it was what happened, in my opinion, with The Last of Us multiplayer stuff is Sony came in, they're switching their strategy to go to more games as a service, and they said, hey, you guys got to pull this. You can't give it, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Factions, was that going to be a standalone, or was that going to be, from the beginning, was that going to be something that Last of Us 2 players got? I thought it was something Last of Us 2 players got, but I could be wrong. But with that in mind, they pulled it and they said, make this thing bigger, make this thing that is going to be a games as a service, because we need to release games as a service between now and the next couple of years so that we can compete in this realm of the industry with the amount of money other companies are making off it. And that's why they came out during Summer Games Fest and it was like, it was too ambitious. So they had to make it its own game, and they're going to charge people for it. Or maybe they'll put it into PlayStation Plus Premium for free and just make that games as a service money. I think that would be the smartest thing. If PlayStation were to do that, is release that Last of Us multiplayer game into PlayStation Plus Premium or PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium. Because I think that would draw in a lot of people to try out the service. Just get in and see what's available in their subscription service. You can guarantee their subscriptions would go up. So I think that's what they should do, but we'll see what happens. But it's interesting because if Xbox can, like, they're always looking ahead with this stuff with their cloud technology and games as a service, if they can get this tech in here, which gives them a leg up on games as a service, you can bet that PlayStation is going to want to utilize that tech into their games going forward. And then that's why I say things like the console wars, like, they're dead. There's no more console wars. These companies are literally working together. Yeah, they're trying to push their platform more than the other one, but they're literally have a business partnership together. So they are making millions and billions, and the other company's making millions or billions. That's all that matters to them at the end of the day. So that's why console wars are kind of dumb. Okay, what else we got here? Indeed, I suspect it won't be long before we start seeing more tangible player-driven interactions using machine learning models at a gameplay level in the coming years ahead. That would be great to see. Just if we can get NPCs, like I said, working, being smarter. And Microsoft already has the infrastructure investments and ingenuity in place to see it all come to fruition. This could be as big as a leap from 2D to 3D, which was a massive leap. If you're around during that time, going from like going to the PS1, the N64, even though it was like these jaggedy ass polygons that looked absolutely terrible. And those 3D games today, a lot of them just, if you were to load those up, you would be like, what the hell were these people playing back in the day? Just seeing that, plug that into your TV and seeing that jump was just massive. That was massive. And then another big jump was like, for me, this was like a just as big of a jump, maybe even bigger. Just because I remember it just a little bit more, was going from like PS2 to PS3, and then original Xbox to Xbox 360. And that's just because, yeah, there were 3D games, but like you had the first time going into HD graphics, which blew me away. I remember going into like Future Shop, which Future Shop was in Canada. It's no longer. They're all now Best Buys, but they had Fight Night on there, and I still remember to this day, just that's probably one of the moments in gaming that blew me away the most, seeing Fight Night on the Xbox 360 on in the kiosk there, based off of what we had on like the original Xbox and the PS2. And a lot of it probably has to do with just obviously the graphics themselves are better, but like that HD stuff was crazy back then. All right. So now I think Jez is getting into predictions. He says, I don't like making predictions because whenever I put text to paper like this, it opens me up to being wrong. And how scary would that be? Well, if Jez was like an insider like me, he would never be wrong. You don't have to go far to see failed editorial tech predictions like the Daily Mail's infamous "The internet is a passing fad" from 20 years ago. Facebook, now Meta, has staked its entire future on VR and the metaverse, which has yet to bear fruit and seems like something of a hype bubble poised to pop. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I don't know. We'll see what happens with metaverse and VR stuff. I mean, obviously the install base. There was an article that talked about the install base of the types of consoles or the types of gaming people do. The biggest was mobile, followed by console, followed by PC, and then at like 7% or something, like, or even maybe even lower that, it was VR. So we'll see how that picks up. Obviously, VR is still expensive I mean, there's cheaper VRs, but I don't really consider VR mainstream yet. I don't know. I could be wrong with that. I'm not huge into the VR. The only VR I've ever had is the PSVR, which I gave to my dad because he literally works out playing Creed, like the boxing game, like every single day. So I was like, you know what, you just keep that VR thing because you play it way more than I play it. Zuckerberg himself even admitted that the metaverse won't be a thing for at least a decade, only a couple of years ago, which makes you wonder how long investors will accommodate such an expensive gamble. Yeah, I mean, that video that Zuckerberg put out about VR and like implementing the 3 different styles of like technology into one headset was pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie, because the big thing for me with VR, with the PSVR, was that's like when you first jumped in, if it was your first time ever using VR, it blew you away for about an hour, and then you started seeing all of like the screen door and the field of view and how your perspective of like everything was blurry at a certain distance. But if they're able to kind of like fix that and put that into a VR set, that would be something I would definitely be interested in checking out. So it goes on here to say Microsoft has famously been relatively lukewarm on consumer VR, but it has gone deep on AI, which to me seems like a far safer and far more lucrative bet. I agree. I agree with that statement 100%. That for Xbox, for Microsoft, especially if they implement it into gaming, AI is probably the safer, better way to go for their return on their investment. Imagine some of the games if they had just incredible AI in there. Benefits for business are obvious and don't necessarily require a huge amount of imagination. From speedier programming to intelligent customer service chatbots, the potential is massive, but the implementation in gaming is what excites me the most. Obviously, there are some serious problems to solve in certain implementations, but the potential is tantalizing. Vast and dense worlds populated with realistic and meaningful art and creatures, supplementary side objectives that free up dev hours for handcrafted features and writing. Yeah, that'd be super cool. Intensive tasks that take weeks reduced to mere minutes with cloud-powered machine learning algorithms, increasing the development speed of AAA games and democratizing AAA quality assets and animation. Smaller businesses and independent developers via ID at Azure. And that statement alone, yeah, that's huge, because if you just think about the amount of delays that have been going on, and yeah, the pandemic plays a role in it, but it's also because of the size of the games and the amount of stuff that they have to do and the expansion that every game needs to be bigger than the other thing. They can take care of some of the stuff with AI powered, cloud powered machine learning algorithms. They would free up tons of resources and they would just make a ton more money.